I recently got a comment on one of my videos that I made a few months back about sport, Taekwondo, in the modern sense versus the old school sense. And just a quick recap, I like the modern sport version of Taekwondo, and I've done both. I came up in the old school method, but I've really liked the changes that came about by the modern style. And I got a comment from I believe, Taco Cat DeBoss. And he disagreed with me, but he was very respectful in the comments, and I thought I would reply back since he's such a respectful guy and had some good points that he was raising in his comment. Now, he gave me a very long comment. You can go and check it out if you'd like to read it in its entirety. It's what I'd call a laundry list of grievances. So he had a long list of issues with the video, and rather than address all of them, I thought I'd pick what stood out as what I at least thought to be the most prevalent issue, the biggest complaint he had with my video, and address that one. And then if he wants to go into more, we certainly can. But the biggest one is this idea that there's a version of fighting that is more realistic for self-defense, and there's versions of fighting that are less realistic for self-defense. Okay, so this gets very confusing because we use a lot of different terms, and we should really define those terms so that we're all on the same page and we can find common ground before we move on. And then we can try to start to figure out what's going on and why there's always arguing around this particular type of subject. So, self-defense, let's define that term to start out with. This is my personal definition because it's usually used as a legal term, but I like to define it simply as staying safe from harm. And I think that's how most people walking around that don't really have martial arts training, they would view it like that. They just want to learn some stuff that keeps them safe from harm in terms of someone trying to enact physical violence on them. So I think that definition works pretty good. That's in line with what most people are thinking. I want to stay safe from harm. Now, when we compare that to what a combat sport is, well, a combat sport in any form is one person trying to dominate and best another person using some form of physical violence. Now, it could be as tame as fencing, where you're just trying to poke them with the rubber point on your sword, or it could be as intense as something like mixed martial arts, where you're trying to cave their skull in and knock them unconscious with your shin, right? But either way, the goal is to best someone using some form of physical violence. Now, you can see right away that the two goals, one being safe from harm, one being to dominate another person, they are very much opposite. So of course, the route to accomplishing those goals is going to look different. And that's why I would contend that trying to compare any combat sport to, quote, realistic self-defense is a major mistake. Let me break down what I think self-defense should look like. I have a series of defensive walls here. And the outer walls are the most important ones. They're the things that are going to save you the most, the things that will keep you the most safe from harm. The first one is awareness, just overall awareness. If you're a female, for example, the statistical odds are that if you're attacked, that if someone tries to use physical violence on you, it's going to be someone that you know that you've probably let into your life, in the case of like a spouse or significant other. So, one of the best things you could do to stay safe from harm in that case is learn what red flags to look out for when you're dating people. What are the red flags that lead to domestic violence? Educating yourself on that is going to be much more useful to you in terms of staying safe from harm than learning how to throw a really hard rear leg roundhouse kick. So awareness, and that's knowing what types of behaviors criminals engage in, knowing what types of places are dangerous to visit so you can stay away from dangerous places. All of those things are the most important, just being aware of what to avoid, basically. Avoiding is half the battle. So next is situational awareness. That just means being aware of your actual environment at that given time. So if you go to a movie theater, for example, where are the exits located? Where could you take cover if there was a mass shooting? Just noting all of those things, being aware of the people there, being aware of the likely places you can exit or hide or whatever you need to do, kind of mapping out a plan depending on your location, just being aware of everything going on in the then and now. That's going to be an important wall, right? Then we've got verbal skills, is what I call it, verbal skills. So that could be using your voice to de-escalate social violence. Maybe you cut someone off in a parking lot at an accident. They get out of their car and they're angry with you and they look like they want to start a fight. You can say, hey, I'm really sorry. I didn't see you there. I totally didn't mean to cut you off. I don't want any trouble from you. I'm just super, super sorry. That kind of thing will often de-escalate a situation. You can also use your voice as a deterrent. Just scream at the person or call for help. And a lot of times, if you look at the statistics, that's a big part of deterring a would-be attacker, using your voice. You can also, during that time, try to just flee, try to run away so that you don't have to use violence, try to escape. It's much easier to run than to fight. So now we get into the fighting phase of things. The next wall is weapons. Now, weapons are much more effective at amplifying your force than martial arts training is. So if you need to use violence on someone, then it's going to be a lot easier, a lot more efficient for you to use violence with a weapon. If I have a knife, a short stick even, of course a firearm, any kind of tool that can enhance my force, it's going to be better than my empty hands and my martial arts knowledge. So weapons. Now, if you, for some reason, can't deploy your weapon, if your weapon gets taken, if you are caught off guard, if you don't have a weapon on you at all, now we're into the area of unarmed violence. And so you can see you've already had all these different walls breached that are more important. And now we're finally at the point where our martial arts or combat sport training would come into play. Now, of course, this unarmed violence is going to look very different from most of the unarmed violence that you would experience in any type of combat sport, because you'll likely be outmatched. Someone will be attacking you who is larger than you. You'll be attacked by multiple people. You'll be attacked by someone with a weapon. Rarely is it going to be that you'll be attacked by someone who is smaller and weaker than you or of a similar size. If they're picking on you, they're either really stupid or they're actually physically more gifted or perceive themselves to be. Okay, so that being said, let's talk about fighting, which we established. Different goals. Trying to dominate someone. What are the things that make you more likely to dominate someone in fighting? One is going to be your size, and by that I just mean what you've genetically been given, how tall you are, how long your reach is, how easy it is for you to develop muscular strength, because that is it's different for everyone. Some people can put on muscle much more easily than others. Some people are just naturally really strong people, and that's something that there's no sort of training that you can do to change. It's just what was given to you. That's huge. That's a big part of it. So someone with a lot of size already has a big advantage, right? Okay, then the next one is strength or athleticism. So these things can partially be trained. We can train to get stronger, of course. We can train to get faster, more explosive. But some of those things are also natural gifts that you just hone. So some people have much better reaction time than others, for example, and no matter how much you train one person, their reaction time may never get better than another's. You ever watch Muhammad Ali in his prime dodge a punch, and it's like he's in the Matrix or something. He has a whole nother level of perception, how people are punching at him than most normal humans, which made him a super boxing competitor, right? And there's not anything that anyone could do training-wise to develop that heightened sense of awareness that he had when it came to dodging punches. That was partially just who the guy was, his genetic gifts. Of course, we can train the athleticism as well. These two things are huge when it comes to your fighting ability. That's 2/3 of the equation. The third piece is your skill, and that is important. I don't want to underplay it, but that's how to do a technique correctly and the strategies behind that technique. So you're basically making these two things as efficient as possible. This is your machine, this is your car, this is how to race your car. But as you all know, you can't win a NASCAR race with a golf cart. If you don't have these two things, then it doesn't matter how much skill you have, you can't best the other person. And some of that is not under your control at all. So I would argue that if you're trying to prepare yourself for this little part of self-defense where you have to use physical violence, and you're trying to overcome someone else's size and strength with the skill you gain from martial arts training, well, it's just one of the most inefficient ways to get the results that you want, which is staying safe from harm. Which is why no combat sport really translates great to self-defense in terms of, if I want to stay safe from harm, what's the most efficient way I can train to accomplish that set of goals? You'd be much better off drilling how to escape and run away, and how to use your weapons, how to get to your weapons when you're being attacked. All of those kinds of things are much more realistic in terms of self-defense. Now, why does this get confused so often? Why do people think of fighting as self-defense? Why is it that, like, someone would say, well, Muay Thai is a more realistic version of fighting for self-defense than sport Taekwondo? It is true, I would agree with that, but only slightly. Anything that has more variables to it, in the case of Muay Thai, you have knees, elbows, punches, kicks, and you can sweep, and you can clinch. So there's more variables you're dealing with that you get good at dealing with. That's, of course, going to help you more in the case of unarmed violence than sport Taekwondo, which is basically just kicking and occasional punch to the body. I get it, yeah, there's more there. But it's missing the most important elements of self-defense, including weapons. So it's so far removed, I don't even see it as the same ballpark. It'd be like learning fencing and saying that foil is more effective for self-defense than saber. I mean, they're sort of unrelated, right? Yes, you get improved athleticism, you get improved timing, distancing skills, but it sounds absurd because, yes, it's so far removed from the goals of self-defense, which we need to see combat sports as well. Okay. So why? Why do we not see combat sports that way? Why are some of you being triggered by me talking about this? It's probably, and I'm just guessing here, but it's probably because it's probably a male thing mostly, that we see our sense of being able to dominate other people as self-defense. It probably comes from our history as animals, where if you want access to good mates, you need to be able to beat up your competition. You need to prove your genetic superiority to the other primates. You need to fight for your love. So if we have a perceived ability to best others in physical violence, what does it do? It gives us status amongst other men, and in our heads at least, amongst females. Though I would argue that if you want females in the modern world, you should be much less concerned with kicking people and more concerned with how to acquire resources, but that's another subject. So I think that's what it really comes from, is we want the status of being able to beat up other competent males. We want to be the top chimp. And you can get to be the top chimp more easily with something like Muay Thai than you can with either version of sport Taekwondo. So what he's really getting at is that old school Taekwondo, in his perception, makes you more of a top chimp than modern sport Taekwondo. Now, if you remove that context from it, that maybe people don't care about being the top chimp, if you remove that out of the picture, then it's really just about which one you enjoy more. And that's what I think is great about having either available. But if you want to be a really hard-hitting power kicker and puncher, there is kickboxing, there is Muay Thai, there is Kyokushin, Karate. You've got some options. If you want to do very, very light contact point fighting where it stops in between every shot, there are options. If you want something in between those two extremes, we've got sport Taekwondo. So it's continuous, it's full contact, it's athletic, but you're not going to get punched in the face, and you're not going to get kicked in the leg, at least on purpose. And lots of young ladies who don't like to get punched in the face enjoy it, and people like myself who I'm not necessarily concerned with being the top chimp. I enjoy that more than I would Muay Thai or kickboxing, because I don't want to go into a competitive venue where I might get my face caved in from a punch or elbow. I just don't want to do that. But I also want to participate in the martial arts, and I want to spar, and I want to enjoy it. So this is a perfect solution for that. It's almost like having different products for different customers, and that's okay. So that would be my response, is that there's no sense comparing anything to realistic fighting that's not directly relating to this context, which some martial arts do, by the way, but none of the combat sports. And so saying that old school is better for that than modern, it just doesn't make any sense to me. I hope you enjoyed my response, and if you guys liked this video, please like and subscribe, and if we have more of a back and forth, we'll do more videos. Thanks very much.